The lawyer slid one page across the table and apologized while he did it. 200 acres went to the older brother. The house went to the older brother. The equipment, the grain bins, the good bottom ground, all of it, to the older brother. And to Wes Harmon, the younger one, went 11 acres along the property line that everybody in the family called the cut. A dried-up creek bed, dead ground. The one piece of that farm nobody had wanted for 60 years. The lawyer said he was sorry. He said it like a man reading a diagnosis. Wes folded that page, put it in his shirt pocket, and drove out to look at what he had been left. 11 acres of gravel and sand, where a creek used to run, and did not run anymore. And here is the part nobody at that table would have believed. 6 years later, those 11 acres of dead creek bed would earn more in a season than the 200 good acres his brother got. People would drive 3 hours to buy what came out of it. His brother would end up asking him for work. The cut, the worst piece of ground on the whole farm. So what could a dried-up creek bed possibly grow that a whole farm around it could not? That is the entire story. And I promise you the answer was sitting in that gravel the whole time. And every person in that family had walked past it for 60 years. Let me tell you about Wes Harmon, because you cannot understand what he built until you understand what he was. A man nobody had ever bet on, including himself. Wes was the second son. And on a family farm, the second son is a problem that solves itself. There is only ever enough farm for one. His older brother, Dale, was the one. 6 years older, steadier. The son their father trained. Everybody knew the farm was Dale's. Nobody ever said it out loud, because nobody had to. So Wes left. At 19, he took a job 2 hours away, driving a delivery route. He did that for 11 years. He was not bad at it, and he was not happy at it. He was just a man in a truck, going where the route told him to go. Their father died in the winter of 2015, and the will did what everybody knew it would do. It gave the farm to Dale. But their father was a fair man, in his own hard way. He did not want to leave his second son with nothing, so he carved off the one piece of the farm that would not hurt the working operation. The one piece Dale would never miss. He left Wes the cut. Let me tell you about the cut, because you need to understand how worthless it was before you can understand what was hiding in it. The cut was 11 acres, along the eastern edge of the farm, where a creek had once run. Harmon Creek, on the old maps. It ran year-round when their grandfather bought the place in the 1940s. There were photographs of their father as a boy, fishing in it. And then, sometime in the 1960s, it stopped. Upstream, the water table shifted. Wells went in. The land drained differently, and the creek dried up and never came back. What it left behind was a scar. A winding 11-acre bed of gravel, sand, and round river stone, dropped there by 10,000 years of running water, and then abandoned. You could not farm it. That was the whole problem. The soil, if you could call it that, was gravel and coarse sand. Water ran straight through it. It held nothing. A crop planted in the cut came up thin and yellow and died the first dry week. Their father tried once, in the 70s, to fill part of it in and plant it. He gave up after one season. After that, the family just mowed it so it did not go to brush, and cursed it a little every time they drove past. 60 years, 11 acres of dead gravel that nobody in 3 generations had ever gotten $1 out of. That is what Wes Harmon inherited. And on the day he walked it, he understood something. His father had given his brother a farm, and given him a rock pile with an apology attached. He almost sold it to a gravel company 2 counties over. He came very close to making the call. And then, before I tell you what stopped him, do me one quick favor and hit subscribe. I put a new one of these up every single day, and this is the exact moment the man nobody bet on stops losing. What stopped him was something his grandfather used to say. His grandfather, who had bought the farm, who had fished that creek, the only person who had ever known the cut when it was alive. The old man used to say one thing, over and over. Wes had heard it his whole childhood, without once thinking about what it meant. He used to say, "Water always remembers where it ran." Wes had thought it was just a thing old people said, a saying. It turned out to be the most important piece of information anyone in that family ever had. And his grandfather had been handing it out for free, for 40 years. Let me tell you about the science, because this is the part everybody skips, and it is the part that explains all of it. When a creek runs for thousands of years, and then the surface water dries up, the creek does not disappear. The water that fed it went underground. It sank into the gravel and kept moving, slow and hidden, along the exact same path the creek used to run on the surface. Down under the dry stones, the water was still there, still flowing, just out of sight. A dead creek is very often not dead at all. It is a river wearing a disguise, and in a few low spots, where the bedrock came up close underneath, that hidden water got pushed back up to the surface. It seeped up through the stones, cold and clean and constant, filtered by 1,000 feet of its own gravel, running at 52 degrees every day of the year, summer and winter. Springs, cold, clean, year-round springs. In the middle of 11 acres, everybody had written off as bone dry. The cut was not dead ground. It had the one thing the entire 200-acre farm did not have and could not buy: a source of cold, clean water that never stopped. Not in a drought, not in August, not ever. Because water always remembers where it ran. Nobody had ever seen it, because nobody had ever gone looking. They had all decided the creek was dead in 1960-something. And once you decide a thing is dead, you stop checking its pulse. Wes found the first spring by accident. He was standing in the cut, on a hot day in July, and he noticed a patch of ground near the middle that was wet, green, cool underfoot, in the one place on the whole farm that should have been the driest. He got down on his knees in the gravel and put his hand in the seep, and he felt cold water coming up out of the ground in the middle of a heat wave. And Wes Harmon, who had spent 30 years being the son nobody trained, knelt in the gravel and understood that his father had accidentally left him the most valuable 11 acres on the whole farm. If that just landed on you, the way it landed on him, tell me in the comments. Has your family ever thrown something away for generations without once checking whether it was actually worthless? I read every one of these. Some of them turn into the next story on this channel. Because knowing you have cold spring water is one thing, knowing what to do with it is another. And here, Wes had no idea. He was a delivery driver. He knew routes, not water. So he did the only thing he could think of. He started reading, and he started asking. And eventually, a retired man at the county extension office told him a single word Wes had never heard in his life: watercress. Watercress is a green. A peppery, crisp salad green that upscale restaurants and specialty grocers pay a premium for, and can almost never get fresh because of one specific, unusual requirement. Watercress does not grow in soil. It grows in moving water. Cold, clean, constantly flowing water, at a steady cool temperature, year-round. It is one of the only commercial crops on Earth that needs exactly that. And it is worth real money, precisely because almost nowhere naturally provides it. You cannot grow it on good farmland. Rich soil, still water, warm summers. Everything a corn farmer has will rot watercress, or bolt it, or kill it. What it needs is a shallow bed of clean gravel, with cold, clean water flowing gently through it, at around 50 degrees, all year long. Wes Harmon stood in that extension office and felt the ground move under him. He had a shallow bed of clean gravel, 11 acres of it. He had cold, clean water, flowing up through it at 52 degrees, every day of the year. He had, sitting in the one piece of ground his family had cursed for 60 years, the most perfect natural watercress bed a person could ask for. Every reason the cut was worthless, as a farm, was a reason it was perfect for this. The gravel that would not hold a crop was the exact bed watercress wanted. The water that made it useless for corn was the whole product. The cold that killed a normal planting was the temperature watercress needed to thrive. The land had been trying to tell them for 60 years. Nobody in the family had ever asked it the right question. Let me tell you about the first 2 years. Because they were not a triumph. They were a grind. Wes did not have money, so he did it by hand. He cleared the channels where the springs seeped up. He shaped shallow flooded beds in the gravel, following the water, letting it run the way it wanted to run. He got his first watercress starts from a supplier, and lost half of them learning how the water moved. He quit the delivery job in the second spring. Everyone told him that was a mistake. He lived on almost nothing while the beds established. His brother Dale drove out to look, once, in that second year. Dale stood at the edge of the cut, looking at his little brother, standing shin-deep in a gravel bed of green, in the piece of ground the family had always laughed about. And Dale said the thing that got repeated at every family gathering for the next 3 years. He said, "You quit a good job to grow weeds in a ditch." He did not say it cruelly. He said it the way the older brother, the one who got the farm, says something to the younger one, the one who got the ditch. He genuinely believed he was watching his brother waste the one thing their father managed to leave him. Wes did not argue. He just wrote it down that night, word for word, the way you keep a thing you are going to need later. Let me tell you about the harvest, because that is where it turned. Watercress, once it takes, grows fast, and it grows nearly year-round in constant cold water. While the fields around him froze solid every winter and grew nothing for 5 months, the cut kept producing. The spring water came up at 52 degrees, no matter what the air did, and the watercress kept growing through snow. Green, in a white field, the only living crop for miles, in January. That was the thing that changed everything. Wes could sell fresh, local watercress in the dead of winter, when not one other farm in the region could sell anything green at all. He took a cooler of it to a restaurant supplier in the city, in his 3rd winter. The buyer tasted it, and then he asked the question Wes would remember for the rest of his life. He asked where the rest of it was, because fresh, cold water watercress, grown local, available in January, was something that buyer had spent his whole career unable to get. He bought everything in the cooler, and he told Wes he would take every bunch he could cut, every week, all year, for as long as Wes wanted to bring it. And here is the part I have been waiting to tell you. If you're still with me, comment, check the gravel, and let me know. That is the exact moment the ground everybody wrote off started paying more than the whole farm. Watercress was only the beginning, because the water was the real asset. Cold, clean, flowing spring water is the rarest thing in agriculture. And once Wes understood that, the whole 11 acres opened up. He added other cold water greens the restaurants wanted. He built more spring-fed beds. Chefs started driving out to see the operation, and then driving out to buy. Some coming 3 hours from the city, because a source of genuine cold spring greens they could put a name and a place to did not exist anywhere else they could reach. The gravel, it turned out, he sold too, clean washed river stone, in small amounts, to landscapers, off the edges of the beds he wasn't using. Even the rocks paid. By his 5th year, Wes Harmon was earning more off 11 acres of dead ground than his brother earned off the 200 good acres next door. Because 200 acres of corn and soybeans, in a decent year, cleared a thin margin at the mercy of the elevator and the weather. 11 acres of year-round cold water greens, sold direct to people who drove 3 hours for them, did not. Now let me tell you about Dale, because a story like this does not end at the money. The drought came in Wes's 6th year, a hard one, the worst in 30 years. The corn on the good ground burned. Dale's 200 acres had the driest summer of his life, and the elevator price could not make up for a yield that came in a third short. And 11 acres away, the springs in the cut ran exactly as cold and exactly as full as they ran every other day of every other year. Because a spring fed by an underground river does not care about a dry summer on the surface. The cut had its worst drought harvest and its best drought harvest at the same time. Because to the cut, it was just another year. Dale drove out to the cut in the fall of that drought year. Not to laugh, this time. He stood at the edge of it, the same place he had stood when he told his brother he was growing weeds in a ditch. He looked at 11 acres of green running through a brown and broken county, and he was quiet for a while. Then he asked his little brother if he needed any help through the busy season. And Wes Harmon, who could have said a great many things, who had every word Dale ever said to him written down in a notebook, looked at his older brother and said yes. He could use the help. He said it plainly, without anger. The way you state a fact the last 6 years had already proven. Because the lesson was never that watercress beats corn. Wes said that to Dale, standing there in the cut, and it is the truest thing in this whole story. The lesson is that a farm that depends on one thing is one bad year away from finding out how thin the margin really is. Dale had 200 acres, and one crop, and one buyer, and the weather. Wes had 11 acres, of the one thing that never stopped. There is a smooth, round river stone sitting on the windowsill of Wes Harmon's kitchen. He picked it up out of the gravel the day he found the first spring. The day he knelt down in a heat wave and felt cold water come up through the stones. It is worth nothing. It is a rock. He has been offered real money for the whole operation twice, and both times he said no. And he keeps that one worthless stone where he can see it every morning, because it is the stone that was sitting on top of a river everybody said was dead. Let me tell you where things stand now, because a story does not end with one good harvest. Wes and Dale farm together now, more or less. Dale still runs the corn and beans on the north ground, but he keeps 2 low, wet corners near the creek line, in cold water beds, under Wes's direction, and those 2 corners earn more than 40 acres of his grain. He does not bring up the ditch anymore. They are not close, exactly, but they are something. 2 men who each know what the other one got wrong, and in a family, that has its own kind of weight. Their grandfather's saying is painted on a board over the door of Wes's packing shed now. Water always remembers where it ran. The workers think it is just a nice thing to put on a wall. Only Wes knows it was the whole answer. Handed down for free, for 40 years, by the one man who ever saw the creek alive. Here is what I want you to take from this. Nobody lied to Wes Harmon. The cut genuinely was terrible farmland. Every person in that family who wrote it off for 60 years was right. You cannot grow corn in it. You never could. His father was not a fool for giving it away, and his brother was not a fool for laughing. They were all answering the same question. The only question that family had ever thought to ask about a piece of ground. Can we farm it? And on that question, the cut scored a 0 for 60 years. Everybody agreed. So completely that the dead creek got a nickname, and a place in the family as the ground you apologized for. Wes Harmon asked a different question. He only asked it because he was the son nobody trained, the one who got the ditch, the one with nothing to lose by looking closer. So when everybody else saw dead gravel, he got down on his knees in it, and he found a river. The water never left. The creek was never dead. The only thing that ever changed was that one man finally stopped believing the ground was worthless and actually checked. So go look at the thing on your place that everybody has already given up on. And before you take their word for it, get down on your knees and check it yourself. Because dead is just a story somebody told a long time ago, and everybody agreed to stop questioning, and the thing they wrote off might be running, cold and clean and constant, 3 feet under the stones, waiting for one person to look. So tell me down in the comments, what is the thing on your place that everybody calls worthless? I read every single one. Some of them become the next story here. And if you made it this far, you already know what to do. Subscribe. There is a new one every day. Tomorrow, a man buys an abandoned rock quarry full of black water that the whole town called a death trap, and pulls something out of it that the city pays him to keep producing. You are going to want to be here for that one.